Democrats grapple over whether Biden should negotiate with McCarthy on raising debt limit. Prince Harry's spare, Meghan Markle's attempt to distance herself amid Hollywood fallout. Elaine Chao, Trump-era transportation secretary and Mitch McConnell's wife, hits back at Trump for giving her the racist nickname Coco Chow. Jimmy Kimmel busts Trump for cheating at his own golf tournament. Speaker McCarthy, Santos will be removed from Congress if ethics probe finds he broke law.
This is breaking news.
I'm Erin Burnett in Washington.
Democrats grapple over whether Biden should negotiate with McCarthy on raising debt limit. Democrats are grappling over whether President Biden should negotiate an increase to the debt ceiling in talks with House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, Republican California. Most Democrats are dead set against negotiating as Biden signals he's prepared to meet with McCarthy, arguing any talks will just be gobbled up by Republicans who will then ask for more. Senate Majority Leader Charles Schumer, Democrat New York, for example, doesn't want Democrats to negotiate with House Republicans until the House GOP shows it can actually pass legislation to raise the debt ceiling. The House GOP is demanding spending cuts be paired with a debt ceiling hike, but it's far from clear that they can rally around a single plan if Democrats in the House hold tight in opposition, especially given the narrow majority held by McCarthy. Other Democrats think it is unrealistic for Biden and his party to take a no-negotiation stance, seeing it as politically rigid and likely to backfire. Senator Joe Manchin, Democrat West Virginia, who is up for re-election next year and represents a deep red state in presidential elections, says it's a mistake for fellow Democrats to think they can raise the debt ceiling without sitting down and negotiating with McCarthy. Manchin met with McCarthy on Wednesday to urge him to negotiate a debt limit and fiscal reform package with Biden, but warned the speaker not to push any plans to cut Medicare or Social Security benefits. Schumer pushed back on that idea later in the day, arguing that McCarthy doesn't have any negotiating position until he shows he can unify his narrow House Republican majority behind a deficit reduction plan. Until Speaker McCarthy has a plan that can pass in the House with his Republican support, his going to the White House is like going with no cards in his hand, Schumer said when asked if there is any value to McCarthy sitting down with Biden to negotiate the debt limit. The bottom line is the first step since McCarthy and many Republicans are playing brinksmanship, holding hostages, instead of playing that dangerous game of brinksmanship, it's incumbent on them to show their plan, Schumer said. Show your own caucus the plan and see if you got the votes to pass it. The White House has also signaled it does not want to negotiate spending cuts as part of a deal to hike the debt ceiling, saying any increase in the borrowing limit should be clean and without conditions. A source familiar with Wednesday's meeting between Manchin and McCarthy described it as a good meeting and said that Manchin urged the speaker to negotiate with Biden to find a path forward on raising the debt ceiling and avoid harming the American people. Manchin told reporters after the meeting that McCarthy agreed not to cut Medicare or Social Security benefits as part of any fiscal reform. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, Democrat New York, however, also dismissed a negotiation with McCarthy as a waste of time when House Republicans are holding the debt limit hostage. There's a difference between negotiation and blackmail, he said at a joint press conference with Schumer. What they're essentially saying on the other side of the aisle is, we will detonate Social Security, detonate Medicare, detonate veterans' benefits, or possibly even risk a catastrophic default for the first time in American history. That ain't negotiation, that's blackmail, he added. Democratic senators say that Schumer doesn't want other members of their caucus to join Manchin's call for bipartisan negotiation over raising the debt limit, urging them to stay unified against Republican efforts to use the debt limit as a bargaining chip. I thought what Senator Schumer said was that no one is supposed to be out negotiating on this point, Senator John Hickenlooper, Democrat Colorado, said of the looming debt limit expiration. Hickenlooper said Schumer is leading the caucus in what he thinks will be successful for this country and that his recommendation not to negotiate is a negotiating position in itself. Representative Brendan Boyle, PA, the ranking Democrat on the House Budget Committee, rejected the idea of Biden negotiating with McCarthy over the debt limit and predicted that House Republicans will have a very hard time passing any budget plan to implement the steep spending cuts favored by House conservatives. I doubt he could get 218 votes for that on his own side, Boyle said of McCarthy's pledge to cut discretionary spending to the levels appropriated by Congress for fiscal 2022, which would amount to nearly a 10% cut in defense spending. He noted that McCarthy was forced to delay action on a border security bill because of squabbling between moderates and conservatives in his conference. House leaders held up another bill aimed at cracking down on progressive district attorneys in big cities because some conservatives criticized it as a federalization of law enforcement. McCarthy's ability to execute in that caucus is something that does not seem terribly strong, Boyle added. It gives us leverage. He noted that past Republican speakers John Boehner, Ohio, and Paul Ryan, Wisconsin, had to rely on Democratic votes to increase the debt ceiling and pass spending bills. Boyle, who has sponsored legislation to repeal the debt ceiling and give the Treasury Secretary authority to issue new debt, said there's no negotiation, we have to raise the debt ceiling, period. Senate Democratic Whip Dick Durbin, is echoing that same message. He warned that any negotiation with Republicans would roil financial markets and the economy, as the talks would likely drag on for weeks or months. You know what's going to happen, we will be lurching from one deadline to the next. It will devastate the credibility of our economy, and that's something that's unacceptable, said Durbin, the number 2 member of Senate Democratic leadership. We gave them Democratic votes for the debt ceiling under Trump, this should be a bipartisan measure under President Biden. That message is resonating with other Senate moderates, such as Senator Angus King, Independent Maine, who said while there should be a bipartisan vote to raise the debt limit, there shouldn't be a negotiation. It ought to be something that's done automatically because the stakes are so high and it's a fundamental responsibility of government, said King, who caucuses with Democrats. It ought to be done as a matter of routine, like turning the lights on. All we're doing is authorizing the payment of bills we've already run up. The problem I have with the term negotiation is it implies that there has to be a quid pro quo, and in this case there shouldn't have to be. Prince Harry's spare, Meghan Markle's attempt to distance herself amid Hollywood fallout. Meghan Markle was noticeably absent from the spotlight as Prince Harry embarked on a media tour for his latest tell-all. The Duke of Sussex's explosive memoir, Spare, which was published on January 10, sold 1.43 million copies during its first day on sale in the UK, US and Canada, making it the fastest-selling non-fiction book of all time. Despite the book's overwhelming success, sources recently told The Telegraph that the Duchess, 41, may have raised gentle concerns about whether it was the right move. The mother of 2, who was described as media-savvy, was more wary than the Duke about this particular project. GB News host Dan Wooten called the Telegraph report absolutely fascinating because he felt it was the first sign of Meghan trying to distance herself from all of the collateral PR damage caused by Spare, UK's Express reported. A spokesperson for the Duke and Duchess of Sussex did not immediately respond to Fox News Digital's request for comment. Royal author Christopher Anderson, who recently wrote a book about King Charles III, told Fox News Digital that he was not surprised the former American actress is nowhere to be seen following the book's release. He suspected that she is sending a clear message: this was Harry's work alone. Meghan clearly doesn't want to make it look as if she's somehow manipulating Harry, or that she's had a hand in shaping his memoirs, Anderson explained. The Sussexes are very sensitive to the fact that their critics believe she has some mesmeric sway over him.